Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are definitely doing the heavy lifting for you, wading through a whole lot of noise, a lot of speculation around one of the biggest reboots happening, the 2027 HBO Harry Potter series.
And we're really zeroing in on a rumor today that's pretty explosive. Honestly, it feels less like standard casting chat and maybe more like a calculated move against an established fan base.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a scoop that could really threaten to redefine the whole nature of the franchise's biggest villain.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to really analyze these startling reports. They're circulating pretty heavily, deep in Reddit threads, industry forums.
It's the usual place of stuff.
Right. And the core idea is that Voldemort, he who must not be named, might actually be facing a gender swap, becoming, she who must not be named.
Wow.
So we're diving into, is this viable? What are the massive lore implications? And maybe what's the creative thinking or desperation behind a shift this seismic?
And the scoop itself is pretty specific. The sources suggest casting calls specifically for the adult Voldemort role are open to both male and female actors.
Right, not just some background character.
No, this is central, and it seems tied directly to the early scenes they need for season 1, which, covers Philosopher's Sorcerer's Stone for our U.S.
And those early scenes, they're absolutely foundational. You need an actor for that dark, whispering present flashbacks.
Like the attack on the Potter. Crucial.
Exactly. And of course, the really big one, that pivotal kind of grotesque confrontation at the end. The moment where the villain's face, that sickly reptilian face, is on the back of Professor Quirrell's head.
Yeah. Living rent-free back there.
Yeah.
But that face, even if it's fleeting, it defines the main antagonist right from the start. The second that actor is picked, the whole tone is potentially set. So the fact that the studio is reportedly opening up that really crucial, defining audition to women, it suggests they might be willing to radically break from movie tradition and maybe even source material.
Okay, let's pull back for a second. We need to put this rumor in context because there's already controversy swirling around this reboot.
Yeah.
Right. It was initially sold on a very, very specific promise.
Oh, absolutely. That promise was, paramount start. Warner Brothers, HBO, they told the audience, look, the series format, 7 seasons, 7 books. This means we can finally have absolute textual faithfulness.
It's a dream for hardcore fans.
Exactly. The goal was supposedly to flesh out all the characters, the plots, the little details that the movies just by necessity had to cut or condense. It was meant to be the ultimate fan service project, fixing the movie.
And that foundational promise, that sales pitch, it's already kind of cranking, isn't it? Because of the first big controversy, casting Papa Isidore as Professor Snape.
Right. The Snape casting, for many dedicated fans, that was the first big signal that maybe fidelity to the source material or, textual adherence was going to be more flexible than they first promised.
Let's unpack why that casting caused such an uproar. Snape, in the books, he has this really distinct look described over and over again.
Yeah, sallow skin, often mentioned, really pale, almost oily, hooked nose, greasy hair.
It's not just a throwaway description.
No, not at all. It feeds into all sorts of fan theories, some plausible, some maybe less so, about potential vampirism or just general sort of miserable look that comes from his dark past and, unhappy life.
So casting Isidore, a black actor, immediately created what critics jumped on as a race swap. It moved away from that specific book description of pallor.
Mm-hmm. And this is where some specific jargon started flying around in the fan discussions, which we should probably clarify.
Good idea.
For a lot of the core fans, this felt like the first sign of stunt cast. That's the term used when people feel a studio is prioritizing maybe a high-profile name or a demographically diverse choice, something seen as maybe an easy marketing angle over what's actually written in the book about the character.
And then the other side, the critics, immediately framed it using terms like woke none.
Right. Suggesting the studio was, sacrificing loyalty to the text purely for, let's say, surface-level political points or demographic targets. It set a really charged precedent, didn't it? It showed the showrunners were willing to adjust physical descriptions, even for someone as iconic and as physically described as Snape.
But it's important to ground ourselves here, too. Not all the casting news has been controversial like this. Despite the Snape issue, the studio seems to have stuck pretty close to expectations in other key areas, which initially at least gave fans some hope.
That's a fair... We know the main trio looks pretty much as expected, age-wise and appearance-wise. Dominic Mucklin as Harry, Arabella Stanton as Hermione, Elisa Stout as Ron.
And some key supporting roles, too.
Yeah, people like John Lithgow as Dumbledore, Nick Frost as Hagrid, those felt pretty much in line visually. And they even cast some minor characters who were cut from the films, like Professor Vector, played by Svetlana Caribou. That casting happening early suggested to some that, okay, maybe they are trying to go all in on book act.
Then there was Snape, the famously sallow Snape, played by SEO.
Yeah.
One critic really cuttingly described it as casting one of the darkest actors on the planet for the famously pale character. That was the huge outlier.
Right.
And now, okay, we're moving from that debate about a race swap to a potential gender swap for the actual symbol of evil in the entire story.
If Snape was, like, the first crack in the foundation, the idea of a Lady Voldemort, that feels more like the Earth.
Okay, let's really unpack the main source of the fan outrage here. Because unlike, say, Snape's skin tone, Voldemort's identity feels so fundamentally tied to his name and his gender, right? His entire origin is being Tom Marvolo Riddle.
This is absolutely the non-negotiable hurdle for so many people. It makes this rumor incredibly volatile. That name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, it's not just some random name J.K. Rowling picked. It is the key that unlocks the character's motivation, his whole theatrical approach to power.
It's the anagram.
It is the anagram. In Chamber of Secrets, Tom Riddle writes his name, TOMMARVOLORIDLE, in the air with fire, right? And then wave of the wand, the letters rearrange.
To I am Lord Voldemort.
Yeah.
Chills every time.
It's one of the absolute most iconic reveal moments in the whole franchise. It's the moment you, the reader, the audience, understand that this seemingly ordinary, handsome orphan is actually the terrifying dark wizard from the past.
So if the character is born a woman with a female name, that whole origin story, that massive reveal, it collapses, doesn't it?
It completely falls apart. It means they have to fundamentally rewrite a major structural plot point. And you see the jokes online already, right? Like, oh, so is her name Martha Riddle, which kind of highlights the problem.
Yeah, Martha Riddle doesn't exactly rearrange nicely.
Not quite. If they pick a different female name, say, I don't know, Minerva Riddle, the anagram still doesn't work. And if they try to force some new anagram with a different name, well, it just feels like it cheapens the original brilliance.
So what could they even do?
Well, theoretically, I suppose they could invent some new lore. Maybe say the anagram was just like one step in his or her transformation. Or maybe that the name Voldemort was chosen for purely symbolic, nothing to do with the birth.
But that feels like such a stretch.
Oh, it would immediately be labeled canon betrayal. That's the term fans when fundamental, established, much-loved story facts get thrown out for a new interpretation. It basically tells the longtime audience, hey, that history you know and love doesn't matter anymore.
And the lore problems, they don't just stop with the name of the anagram, do they?
Yeah.
The character is always referred to using male pronouns and titles.
He who must not be named, the dark heir of Slytherin. It's baked into the language, fear, the whole culture of the wizarding world.
So changing the gender of the central villain, the figure who literally defines their collective trauma, it means every single line of dialogue referencing him needs changing.
It's an editorial nightmare, sure, but maybe more importantly, it fundamentally alters that kind of patriarchal power structure he built around himself with the Death Eaters, doesn't it?
And speaking of structure and relationship, fans are immediately jumping on how this affects his canonical relationships.
Right, specifically Bellatrix Lestrange. She's his most fanatically devoted follower, obsessed with him. And importantly, she is canonized as the mother of his child.
Okay, we need to add context here for maybe the more casual listener. This child, Delphine, that's a plot point from the stage play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Correct. And look, while the Cursed Child's place in the official canon is hotly debated by some fans.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah. But the existence of Delphine as Voldemort's daughter is acknowledged by many. So the fan question becomes pretty direct. If the Dark Lord is now female, how does that union with Bella work? How does Delphine exist within the established?
It just seems to create unnecessary confusion.
Exactly. Confusion about really fundamental. The Death Eater hierarchy, Bellatrix's whole twisted motivation, the concept of the villain's lineage. Fans who just want narrative consistency see this as introducing way too many complex, disruptive plot holes just for the sake of one, admittedly radical, casting choice.
And we absolutely cannot talk about Voldemort without talking about the Fiend's factor. Well, Fiend's performance in the movies, it's just looms so large.
Oh, completely. Fiends basically owned that role. He played Voldemort as this magnetic, terrifying, yet somehow distinctly inhuman. He set an impossibly high bar.
So any male actor stepping into those shoes now
is immediately doomed to comparison, right? You're being measured against a performance that defined the villain for an entire generation.
We saw those rumors earlier about, like, Cillian Murphy being considered, and he very quickly shot shot them down himself.
Yeah, he basically acknowledged how hard it would be. He said something like, it's just really hard to follow anything Ralph Fiennes.
Which kind of gets to the heart of the creative problem, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That quote is, the studio knows that hiring another male actor, no matter how brilliant, will just lead to endless comparison. Fiennes is the...
But the counter-argument from many fans is, okay, fine, copying Fiennes is hard, but changing the gender, that guarantees outright rejection from a huge chunk of the audience.
Yeah.
It risks destroying the legacy of one of literature's most iconic villains.
You see quotes online like, Voldemort isn't a character that should be gender swapped, full stop, or, a black Snape stirred up enough controversy, a female Voldemort is a whole other can of worms.
Okay, I get the fear of comparison, I really do. But isn't there maybe an argument that Fiennes' portrayal, as iconic as it was, relied quite heavily on specific physical things? The hiss, the movement, the sort of theatrical cruelty.
Possibly.
Couldn't a gender swap, theoretically, offer a chance for a totally new kind of sinister energy, maybe something more understated, more psychological, that actually bypasses those direct Fiennes comparisons? If you accept you can't beat Fiennes at his own game, maybe you have to change the game entirely.
And that, I think, is exactly the bridge we need to cross now. We have to try and move beyond the initial fan rage and look at the potential strategic and creative reasons why they might take such a monumental risk. Why do it? The answer might lie in the sheer necessity of reinvention for a reboot.
So strategically, you're saying this could be seen as a massive power move, designed purely to make this reboot stand out from the incredibly successful, universally known films.
Correct. Think about it. The original films exist. They're a complete beloved narrative success story. To reboot this material now and actually achieve new critical and commercial success, the HBO series can't just be a slightly longer, higher res rehash.
It needs its own identity.
Precise. And by fundamentally altering the vessel of the main villain, the showrunners could force everyone, the audience, the critics, the media, to view the character, and by extension the whole show, as something genuinely new. It completely redefines the terms of comparison.
It's almost like creative self-preservation. If you know you can't possibly beat the definitive movie version, you have to carve out a completely different path.
Exactly. And the core argument supporting the potential swap character perspective is that Voldemort was always fundamentally about fear, power, and ideology, wasn't it? Not specifically about being male.
His quest for immortality, the obsession with blood purity, that sheer cold intellect, those aren't inherently male traits.
Not at all. Those are traits that you could argue transcend any simple gender binary. His malice is the constant driving force, regardless of the, physical envelope it happens to occupy.
And if you look back at the book descriptions, even his final form isn't portrayed as traditionally masculine, is it?
Not really. The Dark Lord is described as sort of eely, hairless, pale, having slits for a nose. In his youth, sure, Tom Riddle was handsome, charismatic, but his final form is deliberately stripped of human definition. It moves beyond male or female into something monstrous, almost serpent.
Which brings us back to that really interesting analogy you mentioned earlier, shifting the character's energy from, say, Lucifer to Lilith. We should probably flesh out what that implies psychologically.
Okay, yeah. So the Lucifer analogy, it kind of aligns with the common Western idea of the fallen angel, right? The beautiful, arrogant male figure who chooses pride, rebellion, overt power. The male Voldemort, perhaps like the Fiennes version, relies more on that visible dominance, that theatrical cruelty, that sort of physical terror.
Okay, so that's Lucifer energy. What about Lilith?
Well, Lilith energy, drawing from various mythologies, often represents something more primal, more ancient. The serpent archetype, perhaps, seductive, but also unnatural, maybe.
So different kind of evil.
Potentially, yeah. A female Voldemort could embody a colder, maybe more psychological form of terror. Less about the brute force and the big theatrical displays, and more about quiet, icy manipulation, the slow, calculated destruction of systems and people. It could be seen as moving towards a villain whose power feels less physical and more purely magical.
So the core essence, the rejected half-blood orphan, obsessed with immortality, desperate for ultimate control, that same core could be channeled through a witch instead of a wizard.
I think that's the argument. And it does open up some fascinating narrative possibilities, doesn't it? You can picture the same tragic arc, but centered on a girl. Maybe born into rejection, told she was too much, too loud, too ambitious, maybe called unnatural or dangerous by the, let's face it, patriarchal wizarding society.
And instead of conforming,
she masters every forbidden art, every dark curse. She chooses ultimate self-created power instead of seeking any kind of social acceptance or love. The story of a brilliant, powerful witch refusing to be limited and becoming utterly corrupted by that pursuit. That could be incredibly compelling and maybe very resonant for a modern audience.
And you do see some fans, often those who engage with, fan fiction and alternate interpretation who are intrigued by this. They argue the core narrative is strong enough to handle the change. There was that one quote we saw that kind of summed it up.
Oh, the power never cared for your permission one.
Yeah, that one. He captures that feeling that the drive for power itself is genderless.
Which is probably why the dream casting discussions immediately went towards certain types of actresses embodying that kind of icy royal presence, as some put it.
Right. The names that kept popping up were Tilda Swinton and Cate Blanchett.
Exact. Swinton, who's often described as otherworldly, maybe terrifying, she could embody that ancient, almost non-human aspect of closer to the serpent imagery, perhaps, pure malice.
And Blanchett.
Blanchett was often tagged with things like icy royal, unstoppable, someone who projects immense power just through sheer presence and intellect, making the evil feel systemic, inescapable, rather than just, physically threatening. These actors could potentially embody the character's purpose and essence without needing to mimic or compete with Fiend's specific cinematic persona.
It is a compelling creative case, but we have to turn back to the practicality.
Yeah.
The production challenges, the timeline, because if this decision is happening, it has to be happening like right now.
Oh, it's completely imminent, yes. We know the studio is filming seasons 1 and 2 back to back. Now, while the fully formed adult Voldemort, the resurrected body, doesn't really make his true physical appearance until Goblet of Fire, which is book 4.
They still need someone for season 1.
Absolutely. They need an actor for that face on the back of Quirrell's head for the book 1 finale. That's non-negotiable for season 1.
And at the same time, they have to be casting the younger version of the villain too, right? For season 2.
Exactly. The crucial flashback scenes with the teenage Tom Riddle, the ones in the Diary and Chamber of Secrets book 2, those are needed for the second season they're filming currently.
Okay, so that creates a massive practical problem if they're planning on a female adult Voldemort, doesn't it?
It's a huge structural issue. If the adult version, the one whose face is on Quirrell's head, is female, then logically they must also cast a female young Tom Riddle for season 2. A young, Martha Riddle, to use the joke name again.
To maintain narrative consistency, to show the progression.
Right, you need to show how that girl descended into dark. You can't have a teenage boy Tom Riddle who then somehow becomes an adult female Dark Lord later.
And casting a female Tom Riddle for season 2 means they have to tackle the anagram problem head on right there in book 2. That's where Riddle reveals himself to Harry using the name.
Precisely. They can't kick that can down the road until book 4 or whenever the adult body appears. The name, the anagram, it's intrinsic to the mystery and the reveal in the second.
Wow. Okay, that feels like the biggest logistical hurdle they'd face. If they cast a male Tom Riddle for season 2, well, that basically signals the adult Voldemort will eventually be male too, and this whole rumor dies down.
Correct.
But if they cast a female Tom Riddle, they absolutely have to come up with a completely new, believable, and hopefully compelling explanation for that I am Lord Voldemort moment, smack bang in the middle of the series. The practical implications are just staggering.
They really are. And this leads us right into the whole issue of secrecy. Seems to be breeding a lot of mistrust.
Yeah, the report suggests HBO is keeping the identity of the actor playing the Quirrell face role under extreme lock and key, maybe planning to hold it back until the season 1 finale actually airs.
And fans are interpreting that extreme, perhaps predictably, as confirmation that the studio knows they're making a choice that will be controversial, maybe even widely.
Speculation is they're trying to control the narrative, delay the inevitable backlash, especially after the Snape reaction.
That's the theory, that the backlash will be monumental, so they want to manage it carefully.
But critics argue this kind of secrecy, instead of building positive hype or excitement for a big reveal, actually just breeds mistrust.
Yeah, it often does, yeah.
In this era of huge IP reboots, when studios seem to be hiding major decisions about really iconic characters, the audience often assumes the worst. It can signal insecurity, maybe a lack of faith in the choice itself, rather than coming across as a thrilling, confident surprise.
And we absolutely have to touch on the political elephant in the room of requirement here. The huge irony surrounding this whole rumor, given who wrote the source material.
Right, the author J.K. Rowling. She's still listed as an executive producer on the series, despite her very public, very controversial, and extremely polarizing views on gender identity.
So the idea of this particular studio working on this particular IP with this particular author attached, potentially casting a gender-swapped dark, a character literally defined by male titles and pronouns in the books, it's incredibly charged, hugely charged. And this is where we really need to step carefully and just report on the main interpretations circulate, maintaining impartiality. Because this isn't just about creative license anymore. It's about perceived message.
Okay, so what are the main interpretations floating?
Well, the first one is basically what we discussed earlier, that this is simply a bold narrative choice done purely for creative distinction, trying to separate the new series from the films, and it's completely divorced from any political, just a story choice.
Okay, that's interpretation 1.
Interpretation 2, which you see widely discussed discussed among critics and commentators is that this could be a symbolic act of separation or even defiance, an attempt by the studio to create visible, progressive distance between the Harry Potter IP itself and the author's current controversial public.
So, by altering the gender of the most significant character, the studio could be trying to signal that the themes and interpretations of the story are now separate from the creator's personal view.
That's the argument summary. It's like using a fundamental character change as a form of cultural negotiation, almost trying to decouple the text from the living author, even while she technically still has an executive producer credit. It's fraught with political implications, obviously.
Wow, okay. And the third interpretation?
The third is perhaps more pragmatic, that this is just an inevitable outcome of modern adaptation. The idea that in today's media landscape, to continually attract new, younger audiences, big IPs feel pressure to reflect contemporary cultural conversations and priorities. And maybe a gender-swapped villain is seen simply as a calculated commercial decision to stay relevant or generate buzz, not necessarily a direct message aimed at the author or anyone else.
The real complexity here, though, is that the studio already set a precedent with Snape, showing they're willing to deviate from source fidelity.
Exact. That precedent ensures that any subsequent radical casting decision, especially one touching on something as sensitive as gender identity, is almost guaranteed to be viewed through a political lens, no matter what the showrunner's actual intentions might be. The action itself becomes politicized simply by habit.
And all this political friction just ramps up the tension around the secrecy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If and when the decision is finally revealed, the conversation probably won't be just about whether it works for the story.
No, it'll inevitably be tangled up in whether the studio is making a statement and what the fallout of that statement means for the relationship between the author, the studio, the IP, and the already pretty fragmented.
Okay, so let's try and bring this back to the core tension here for you, the listener, trying to make sense of all this. This potential casting choice, if it turns out to be true, it really represents a clear, high-stakes collision, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's a fundamental choice between, on one hand, cinematic loyalty, sticking close to Ralph Fiennes' his iconic portrayal, respecting the canonical Tom Marvolo Riddle anagram, and on the other hand, embracing significant creative risk-taking, taking a gamble to ensure this new series has enough critical distance and its own unique identity to actually survive in today's crowded reboot landscape.
And the question becomes, why should you care about the specific vessel carrying a fictional dark? Well, because this decision, whether it happens or not, it raises a really essential question about all contemporary IP. It goes way beyond just the wizarding.
We're living in an age just dominated by reboots, revivals, reimaginings.
Exactly. And this forces a confrontation with a key. How far can a studio fundamentally alter the vessel of a beloved character, change their race, their name, their gender, while still claiming to preserve the core essence that actually defines the story's central conflict, heart?
And it's an issue that's clearly splitting everyone, fans, critics, even creative executives right down the middle. It challenges the very meaning of loyalty to source material versus the practical necessity of creative evolution. We're kind of watching a real-time negotiation for the soul of this massive franchise.
Which leads us to that final thought we wanted to leave you mulling over. If we accept, just for argument's sake, that the absolute core identity of the Dark Lord Tom Riddle, twisted, malicious response to his own background, his half-blood status, his rejection is fundamentally rooted in pure, cold self-loathing.
Does changing the name or changing the gender actually change the source of that mal? Or is true, deep-seated evil, always born from the same universal wound, the inability to love, the paralyzing fear of death, the desperate, corrupting search for power, regardless of who happens to carry them?